Hello and welcome to Dancer Support Mission by Sabine for Shine Your Light. Today we have a new episode of Dancer to Dancer Words of Wisdom. And the goal of those interviews is to meet the person behind the dancer and share with you all not only the highlights of someone's career, but also the challenges behind the scenes. Truly, my wish is to bring healing into the dance world, dancing to heal, healing to dance, one artist at a time, and one personal story at a time. So today, I'm really delighted to have as my guest, Nancy Raffa. I hope I'm saying your name right, Nancy.
Yes, that's fine.
So Nancy, you are like a director of repertoire at the American Ballet Theatre right now?
Yes.
And so I was very excited. We've been introduced by a dear friend of mine, so I was very honored to be able to interview you. And I would like to just introduce you with just this little sentence that you have on your bio that I really like, that in 1980, you became the youngest and first American female to win the gold medal at the Prix de Lausanne competition in Switzerland. So that was in itself a big achievement to start your career. So I would like to ask you actually, how did you start ballet? How did you get into it also professionally? You know, when did you decide that this would be your profession?
Okay. My mom was a classically trained pianist, and she loved to draw also. So she was very connected with the arts. She actually ended up becoming a pianist for ballet for my teacher, Madame Darvash, and later on went on to play for APT and Miami City Ballet and New Jersey Ballet and for various different teachers in New York. So I was the only girl of a family of 4 brothers. 2 brothers were older, 2 brothers were younger. So as the only girl, my mom wanted to introduce me to dance, to ballet. My aunt took ballet when she was younger. My mom always aspired to be a dancer, but didn't have the physique for it. So she brought her only little girl to the local ballet school. I was 5 at the time, and I fell in love with it right away. I got into the class, and there were other students, other children, and I didn't want to go. I was crying not to leave the studio after the first class. So we continued to go to the local school for maybe 2 years or so. At that same time, my dad got sick with Parkinson's disease. So he was actually one of the youngest cases in the United States to get diagnosed with Parkinson's at the age of 37. And I was 5.5 years old. So that was really, really difficult. And my mom almost stopped taking me to classes because we couldn't afford to go anymore. And I begged her, please, can you find somewhere to take me? So she brought me to School of American Ballet to audition. And at the School of American Ballet, they took her aside after the audition was over and told her, your daughter is very, very talented, but doesn't have the right body for ballet. Her neck is too short. She's doesn't have the feet we're looking for, et cetera, et cetera. And I clearly remember crossing the street in New York City after the audition. I felt like I did a good audition. I was 8 years old. What does an 8-year-old know? The only thing I knew is that I didn't want to stop. So my mom had told me what they said. And she said, what do you want to do? I said, find me another teacher. I can't not do this. So we went to Carnegie Hall, and she explained the situation with my father. So they put me in a class, and the director of the school had offered a scholarship for me to continue studying. And that's actually how my mom became a ballet pianist. One day in one of those classes, the pianist didn't show up, and the teacher got really nervous, and my mom used to sit in the doorway watching the class. So she said, if you have sheet music, I can sight read really well. I think I could follow you. So the teacher did that. She got all the music from the back room, put it on the piano. My mom sat down, and that's how her pianist career started in the dance world. So I ended up studying together we grew up in the ballet world together in a way. I was learning and she was learning at the same time. And I remember helping her. She would ask me what the names of the steps were, what was the next progression at the bar. And so we worked together even from that early time. And after about a year or so studying at Carnegie Hall with a lot of different teachers, my mom realized that I needed to have, if I wanted to do this professionally, I was going to need a more serious teacher. So she started to look for extra work also in the neighborhood, just to earn more income. So we were living off of whatever income she earned as a pianist, and we were on welfare on behalf of my dad's illness. And she found around the corner a teacher that had opened up a private school. And she went and played a class there. And it was Madame Darvash. And she saw the way that Madame taught, and she saw the way that she explained things. And she knew right then and there that there were teachers that taught in a different way. She understood. She didn't know much about ballet, but she understood that there was a different level of learning and teaching that was happening at that school. So she said to Madame, she goes, I have a 10-year-old girl. She's really talented. You have to see her. And Madame looked at her and she goes, well, she's too young to be taking these adult classes, but I'll have a look at her. And so my mom brought me to Madame, and Madame said, okay, she's very gifted, but she needs to relearn everything. And I can, if I close my eyes, I can visualize where I was standing, how she was working with me. She did like a private lesson with me. And that was the beginning of a really intense mentorship. So my mom pulled me from Carnegie Hall. Madame allowed me to take the classes with the adults. And then her school grew. She moved to 60th Street and Broadway, right near Lincoln Center. Classes, she started adding classes onto the schedule and new other teachers. And I just took as many, I would take the train in from Brooklyn. Even my dad would accompany me, even though he was ill, so that I wouldn't be alone on the train. And I went as much as I could get into the city. And it was an hour one way and an hour the other way to get in and out of the city from where we lived in Brooklyn. But I fell in love with Madame. I fell in love with what she was teaching. I started dreaming about, because Misha had just defected, I started dreaming about one day dancing in front of Misha. I had all these aspirations, but I was a shy kid and didn't know if anything could come of what I was doing. I just know I loved it. And I knew from a very early age, maybe 7 or 8 years old, that if I could work hard, like I would think, oh, the American dream, if you work hard, you can do anything that you want. My motivation was to help and save my family. I thought if I could work as hard as I can and get as good as possible and become a ballerina, then maybe I could help my father and I can help my brothers. And that was my motivation. Besides loving the dancing. So I continued training with Madame. And I had the opportunity when I was 14 to audition to participate in the first US competition, Mississippi competition. And David Howard had adjudicated that audition. All the students that wanted to participate went to class with him. Now, David and Madame were competitive schools in the 1980s, like late 70s, 80s. So, and I guess all, the dance world is small. So they knew there was this little kid that was very gifted, and David had some other dancers that were very gifted. So it was the big, okay, all the gifted kids were coming to audition for going to this competition. And I remember being the last, me and this other girl that was very talented, also very young, that was David's student. We were the only two dancers left in the class at the end of the audition. And I remember David had called Madame and said, look, your dancer is very talented, but she's too Russian trained to represent America in an American competition, so we're not going to allow her to go to the competition. And I remember when I heard that, I was crushed, absolutely crushed. It was the same summer that Nadia Comaneci was winning the Olympics. And I remember, and Nadia was Romanian, and Madame Darvash was Romanian, Hungarian-Romanian, and she trained in the Vaganova school. She was in that last class with Kolpakova, Vaganova's last class. So Kolpakova was in the class. Nora Kovac was in the class, who was the first Hungarian to defect, and Madame was in the class. So I was trained Vaganova, of course, but I had other teachers at Madame's school that also incorporated yoga into their way of working. So at age 10 and 11, Jetta Constantinescu and Julio Horvath, who invented the whole gyrotonics system, they were two teachers that had a great influence on me in more ways than I could have ever imagined for my whole life's trajectory. So at 10, 11, Julio and Jetta started teaching me the gyrotonics floor.
Amazing.
Yeah, the floor stuff. And to open up my body, that was difficult to work with. I didn't have natural extensions. I didn't have natural feet. I didn't have the natural physique that most ballet dancers have. I had to work on creating a body apt for ballet. And I did that through the auxiliary work that Jetta and Julio gave, which was yoga. With yoga and hatha yoga and yoga-based stretching, breathing exercises, all of that whole system that he invented for dancers through the hatha yoga base. That's what I grew up with, that and Vaganova training.
That's amazing. I mean, what a combination to start with.
It is. It was incredible.
At that time also, I mean, because that was the beginning of all this.
Exactly. And that opened up my mind to, in conjunction with my father being ill and me watching him do all these trials with allopathic medicine and watching the horrible effects those drugs had on him from really early on. I was, first of all, afraid to get ill, and second of all, made a vow to myself that I would not ever take any kind of synthetic drug to help myself. If I needed to help, I would try to find a natural way of doing. So I remember getting my first massage at age 14, and Julio did acupuncture also. So whenever I had an ache or a pain, I would get acupuncture, and then they would talk to me about Eastern philosophy. And I grew up Roman Catholic, but then I had these teachers teaching me all of this other way of thinking and this other philosophy of how to live life and how to take care of yourself. So the two, like this very intense upbringing with the Catholic Church and going to a Catholic school, and then this whole Eastern philosophy.
And the Russian schooling as well.
And the Russian schooling. That was coming from Brooklyn. Very unusual. So fantastic. All of this was how I I grew and developed. The relationship between my mom and Madame Darvash was very intense. They were two very, very strong women with very, very strong personalities. And I had the opposite kind of personality. I was very introvert. I was very shy. Being the only girl in the family, I also was alone a lot of the time. I mean, I connected with my brothers, and I'm very, very close with my brothers, but they did different things than I did, and I was doing the ballet thing. So I was kind of isolated as a kid also. By the time the adjudication for that Mississippi competition came, it kind of put me in a depression, and miraculously, don't know where this man came from. There was a sponsor that showed up at Madame's school. His name was John Potter, and he was looking for children to sponsor. And he had heard of the Prix de Lausanne, and he came to Madame Darvash and said, you know, I was having conversations with such and such persons, and I would like to take a look at your student. I'm interested in sponsoring her. So he watched class one day, and he said, okay, yeah, I would really like to do this. Would you be willing to prepare her? So that happened like December, and Lausanne was in January. So I had a month to put together whatever variations we were going to do. And Madame choreographed something she had choreographed when she was director in the State Opera in Cluj. So I had a solo to Spring Waters music. I had Nutcracker variation that I was preparing anyway to dance Nutcracker. And I went to Lausanne. Mr. Potter sponsored everything. Obviously, I was not able to afford to do that on my own. And when I went to Lausanne, I was so afraid of disappointing my family or not achieving what I really hoped to achieve, that I decided I would go just to have the experience and just show how much I love dancing. So I kind of took the pressure of competing off of myself and just took it as this is an amazing opportunity for me to perform, see Europe for the first time. And that's what I did.
That was very mature for a 16-year-old who...
I think from very early age, I was pushed into having an attitude towards life that was beyond the years of, the age that I was. My family, there were troubles in my family. We lived in the house with my grandparents. My grandfather was alcoholic. So there was always some kind of upset or challenges, fights. And then when my father got sick, emotionally, that really took a toll on him. So there were a lot of conflict between my mom and my dad. And growing up was difficult. My two oldest brothers were from a different father and a different marriage. So my dad took out a lot of his frustrations on my older brothers. And it was a complicated family life. We were all really close and we really loved each other, but there was a lot of dysfunction and conflict. So my escape in a way was going to ballet class and dreaming. I would put the music to Giselle or the music to Romeo and Juliet in my room and close my door and then just imagine that I was dancing this part and that part. And
I think that's very important actually for young people to actually, fantasize about what they want to do and how they want to, and feel into it. I have a feeling sometimes now it's so rigid, and I think for me it was also so important to be able to dream big, nothing stops you from doing that.
Those dreams were also a way to protect myself emotionally from what was happening in the house. And I thank God every day for that, because eventually, after winning Lausanne, I was able to help my family. I actually had gotten some commercial work. I got guesting work. I got a lot of publicity. So I was this child prodigy, this child star. That didn't help me in the long run, but it helped immediately in those years, those teenage years, to support my younger brothers to go to school, to pay for my father's medications, to take care of my mom and my family with rent and things for the house. So, yeah. And then
heavy burden for a young lady.
It was a lot. It was a lot. And, but it helped me to grow, and it helped me, the conflict it brought me helped me to unfold later on in my adult years to a greater understanding of life and things, and helped me become the person that I am, helped me to go the routes that I did, which were not conventional. Let's see, after Lausanne, in that 1 year, I joined Makarova and Company, and I replaced Makarova and Petit, which was a big thing in that time, during that time period, because she was the big ballerina of New York, of ABT, of the world, after having defected. And she kind of took me under her wing, and I did my debut in Petit with Bujones, and he asked me to become his partner. At the same time, they invited Misha to come see the performance, and Misha invited me to come take company class at ABT. So I was only 16 years old when all of that happened, and I was offered a contract at ABT. My mom went to the office to negotiate the contract with me, and my mom didn't really know much about the dance world or how to do negotiations like that. And she was so worried about me. If I didn't take the position, then maybe the opportunity wouldn't be there again. Madame, on the other hand, wanted me to wait and wanted to negotiate for a soloist contract or a principal contract. And things don't work like that at ABT. You have to go through the ranks, and you have to pay your dues. And they were not, even though they had presented the contract by saying, we know that she could be a soloist in the company, but we're not going to be able to offer that to her because she's so young, we feel it would be better that she go through the ranks. So I went into the Corps de Ballet with them promising to give me roles as a soloist, principal, etc. When I got into ballet theater, it was a shock, because it was an enormous institution with some of the most famous dancers of our whole century. And I was one amongst 80 very talented people, instead of being the talented person from my small environment at Madame's school. Plus, I was so young with no experience, life experience. I had to move away from my home. That was very hard to do because I was afraid of what was going to happen with my brothers and my father if I wasn't there. And living on my own in Manhattan, having to have the responsibility of paying bills. We used to tour 4 to 5 months out of the year. So that meant me separating from my family for these long periods of time. So I remember being really happy to be in the company and dance and get that experience. But emotionally, I struggled. It was really difficult for me to be far from home. It was really hard for me to feel unprotected in the company. Like I didn't have that comfort of Madame giving me one-on-one feedback, or having my mom there to protect me. And so I was very, very vulnerable. And when the years started going by and things started happening, some political things, some personal things, and I didn't see myself going up in the ranks as fast as some of my other peers who came into the company at the same time. There was like this generation of baby ballerinas when I joined ballet theater. I was one amongst like 5 that were up and coming in New York at the time. Darcy Kistler at New York City Ballet, Susan Jaffe at ABT, Deirdre Carberry, Amanda McCarrow. Those were all my colleagues, my peers, that kind of...
They were as young as you?
They were older than me. All of them were a little tiny bit older. Darcy was my age, but she was at New York City Ballet. We were actually in school together. I later was sponsored to go to professional children's school. So I did my schooling for 2 years through correspondence, which was really out there in that time. Now we have the Zoom and we have the online classes, but at that time, to be a kid on correspondence was a big deal. And Darcy and I were in French class together and in an English class together. And both of us went for 2 years, and both of us dropped out of high school when we got into our respective companies. It was too much to do, school and tour and ABT and all of that. Because I remember ABT putting me my first week, I still have this schedule, my first week of rehearsals, I was in 20 different ballets, in 20 different roles. I was learning corps de ballet in all the big ballets. I was learning this pas de deux. I was learning Eliafeld ballet with, me and Susan and Elaine Kudo and Misha. We were learning this other ballet from Eli. It was just, they were doing new creations. Jerome Robbins it was insane. It was like, whoa. And I had never had that kind of experience before. So, and then some of those other dancers were working privately with the ballet mistresses at the time. So it felt to me like they had the support I didn't. And Madame was very upset that I left so soon, and that my mom didn't listen to her for the way that the contract was negotiated. So I had a little bit of a, how to say?
Let down, almost.
No, it was a mind play. Mm-hmm. I think that Madame took her frustrations out on me. So the way that she would say things to me in the class were very oppressive. And it created a feeling of betrayal, a feeling of hurt and confusion. It made me doubt what was true. Ballet theater was saying one thing, Madame was saying another thing, and then I was caught in between those two worlds, kind of battling, and Madame and my mom battling. So I felt like I was a ping pong ball amongst all of these adults that had their own agenda happening, and they weren't taking care of the child that was trying desperately to hang on to any kind of sense of care or value. Or I just felt when I was at ballet theater, they were critical of me because I came from Madame's training. And I didn't come through the ABT school and the studio company, and I didn't come from them. Then I felt Madame criticizing me because they were changing me. They were, now I don't do things the way she taught me anymore. And so it was all very confusing. And I remember after 4 years of that, and then trying to understand, well, what happened to me that, you know, I was able to do what I did in Lausanne, and now here at Ballet Theatre, why am I struggling so much? Why am I not being received in the same way? Part of it was I was just still a kid, and they looked at me as a kid, and they looked at me that I had lots of time to still go up. I looked at it as I wasn't good enough. I wasn't as good as those. And so I had this inner battle, inner war within my heart and mind as I was going through puberty, as I was going through, you know, adapting to an adult lifestyle way before I was ready to do that.
It's almost like a curse, right? To have all of this so young is not necessarily a good thing, right?
It was awful. And if I had to do it all over again, I would have waited to finish high school properly, and gone into the professional situation in a way where I would have been mentally and emotionally ready for it. It was way too fast to be put into a situation like that without having somebody there to guide and nurture. And by the time I hit 19 years old, I had been 4 years in the company, I hit a clinical depression. And I remember Ivan Naj coming to see me one day. He was very close with Madame Darvash, and he was visiting, and he used to come every summer to teach, and he kind of took me under his wing when I was taking classes with him and learned pas de deux classes from him, etc. And he came in and he saw me, and he said to Madame, he goes, she's got to get out of this situation. She's got to get away from you, and she's got to get away from her mom. Let her come to Chile for a 6-month leave of absence, and give her the time and space to find herself, to dance, to heal a little bit, and then she could go back. So I asked Misha for a leave of absence, and he didn't want to give it to me. He had said, which surprised me, because in my mind I had built up that nobody at ABT liked me. And he said to me when I asked him for the leave of absence, he goes, I'll sign it if you promise you'll come back. And I said, okay, I promise I'll come back. And he signed it, and I finished my Met season that year, 1985. Got on the plane the next day after the season ended, went to Chile, didn't speak Spanish, didn't know anybody in Chile except Ivan and another dancer that studied with Madame. And I remember that night, there was a blackout in the city. I was in the center of the city staying with this other dancer that was a Madame student. And Anthony says, get down, get on the floor. And I'm like, why?
Earthquake.
And no, not an earthquake. It was a protest. It was a big protest, and the protests at that time when Pinochet was president happened most strongly in the center of the city. And we were in the Plaza de Armas, which is the core of Santiago, and then the whole city comes out from that center. So there were military tanks. There was a military band actually playing in the plaza. And then all of a sudden the blackout happened, and all of these trucks, the tanks came in. There were tear gas bombs. People were running, and there were Ivakaya, there were all the young leftist protesters were chanting, he's going to fall, he's going to fall. And I found myself in the midst of this political turmoil that I wasn't even aware of that happening. So it was kind of a shock. And then that happened, and then my friend explained to me what the political situation was, which was an eye-opener for me, because I had no idea any of that. I didn't know any history at all. If you think about it, I didn't even finish my education by that time. So I didn't, like, there were so many things about life that I hadn't learned.
But Yvonne didn't tell you anything about that?
No.
The events were...
No. Only thing Yvonne said to me was, you'll be fine and you'll be protected because you'll be working for the theater, and the theater was protected by the government. I didn't know what that meant. I had no idea. The theater in Santiago is beautiful. It was actually the same designer that created the Paris Opera designed that theater. It was such a beautiful theater in this, like 2 blocks away from the center. And we did an amazing rep in that period of time. The 2 years that I spent in Chile, we had Cranko and we had Ben Stevenson and we had all the classics. We had Balanchine. I danced a lot, and it
so
was.
You stayed more than 6 months in the end.
I stayed more than 6 months. What had happened? I started to make friends in the company. I met my first husband, who was a student in the School of Beaux-Arts, Bellas Artes. He was a painter and later became a costume set designer for ballet. I met a people that were so warm and a culture that was so embracing that I didn't want to leave after 6 months. I didn't want to leave a real theater. I didn't want to leave the friends that I made. I fell in love with Jorge. I didn't want to leave him. I found my happiness, and it was in that situation, learning about the history of Chile and how the people were oppressed, and the coup d'etat that took over, and how even people that I met in their immediate situations with their family members that had to exile because of what happened, and other life situations that were so strong and so difficult. It made me realize that more importantly than pursuing the fame of the career or notoriety in a career, it was more important to look for happiness in life. And I felt in that moment for the first time that I started to understand life better. I started to see my family situation in a different perspective. And I kind of decided that I was not going to let more superficial things guide me in my life, but really understanding and trying to find happiness and fulfillment. That became my goal for whatever decision I made. So I ended up staying in Chile for 2 more years. And then when Yvonne got offered the director of England, I was offered a contract to go to France. So I had a choice. Do I go back home? So
you went to Nancy.
And I went to Nancy. That's how it happened. Helene Trailin, who was Boris Trailin's sister, she was director of the company at the time, and Boris was a judge at the competition. She had gone to New York to look for dancers and stopped in my school and asked about me, where is Nancy? What's she doing? And Madam said, I was in Chile, et cetera, et cetera. And they contacted me. So I had to make a decision. Do I go back? Do I go back to New York, try to go back and talk to Misha and go back to ABT, or do I go to Europe? And I took the decision to go to Europe. One, because they had said to me when I was in Lausanne, you probably would do much better in Europe with the kind of dancer you are than to go to America that's just circus and more technique. And so I thought, let me get that experience. So I told my mom I was going to go to Europe. She was not so happy. I also had gotten married in Chile to my first husband so that we would be able to be together in Europe. That didn't go very well with my mom at all because she was very upset that her only daughter didn't do the conventional kind of wedding and marriage and that. But once she met Jorge, she liked him and understood why I did what I did. So I went home for a short while, 2-3 weeks, and then we went to Nancy. And I ended up staying in Nancy for 7 years. And I went through 3 directors, Helene Chailin, Patrick Dupont, which actually was the longest director that was there. I ended up being Patrick's partner, and we ended up dancing a lot. We did like 250 shows in a year because he was so popular at the time. He was like the Misha for France. And so we would tour. We toured everywhere, all over the world. He brought in Ulysses Dove. He brought in Killian and Bejar. And I got all that experience of working with the best choreographers in Europe. And then Pierre Lacotte was the last director I worked with. And Pierre had said to me when he joined the company, he wanted to make a shift in the company and create a kind of mini Paris opera. That was his aspiration at the time. And he had a lot of students from the conservatory that he wanted to give jobs to. And he also said, you know, you're a Patrick dancer. So he labeled me as being Patrick's dancer. So he had said to me, I respect your talent. I respect your artistry, et cetera, but I know eventually I'm going to want to fill all the principal category. Because I went to Chile as a principal, Helene took me as a principal, and he had said to me, you know, I respect you in the position that you're in the company, and I will work with you for a period of time, but I know eventually I want to fill those spots with different kinds of dancers and dancers that were my own dancers. So I understood what he had said, and I still worked that year and did a lot. We worked with Antonio Gaddis. I did Miss Julie, so many different roles. We did Giselle. I got a lot of incredible information from Pierre that's coming from the roots of the French ballet, which was, so I got education in
and his
Europe.
research, because he researched so much about
incredible
ballets,
right. So, but I was looking for another job to go to, because I knew that the period of time he was going to keep me was going to be limited. And so I started to negotiate coming back to ballet theater, to go back home, because it had been by that time 10 years since I had left home. And at the time at ballet theater, Jane Herman, who was the executive director, was also doing the artistic director because Misha had left. And I went back, I took class. She said, I'm very, very interested in you. And then I went back home to France to pack and start preparing. And I get a call from Ross Stretton that Jane was fired and that they were in search of a new director, and that they had to hold off on giving me my contract because they needed to find the new director. So I waited over that summer, and they still didn't have, they still didn't have a decision on who the new director would be. So I started getting nervous, and I said, I don't want to leave myself a whole year without dancing. Let me take some other auditions. So I auditioned. I had auditions set up for Boston. I had auditions set up for Miami. And Miami, Edward saw me in class, and he offered me a contract right away. So I decided to take that contract to have a guaranteed work at least for 1 year until ABT figured out what was happening. And the day that I went to talk to Ross to tell him I signed the contract with Miami was literally the day they announced Kevin McKenzie as the new director. And I came out of the office and was leaving. I said goodbye to my friend that was at the front desk, Roseanne. Kevin came in, I came out, and he was like, we bumped into each other, and he said, I hear you want to come back home. I'm interested. I hear you're in good shape. Let's have a conversation. I went, well, I'm here today to tell you that I just signed a contract with Edward. So I won't be able to do that. He said, okay, stay in touch with me. We'll keep things open. And I went to Miami, and after a month of rehearsing, I tore my hip flexor. I had a really severe injury in my hip that I couldn't recuperate from. And that threw me into a second major depression. The fact that I did this whole transition, it was so difficult to find, and, you know, with all the waiting and find another job, etc. And I had just gotten to Miami. I was only a month there, and then the injury happened. And they didn't have in that period of time physical therapy or departments to help dancers recuperate from injuries, at least in the smaller companies in the United States. That didn't exist. So I was kind of left on my own to try to figure out how to get better from this really severe injury. I'd gone back to New York. I went to doctors in New York. The healing process was not properly guided, and I didn't have the proper healing tools, like a therapist to go to every day, or the actual physical therapy. They didn't even know what it was that I had. Some doctors were saying I tore the hip flexor. Some said it was a severe strain. Whatever it was.
If it's not broken, it's really hard to repair, right?
Right. And especially the hip, you can't you can't even do normal life functions, walking, sitting, standing, sitting and standing, without using that area of your body. So I didn't know what to do. After like 1 year, it was not healing. I kept trying to come back, and I kept suffering from really, limited mobility, a lot of physical pain. And I did go through a depression, because I didn't know what to do. My husband was still in Europe, and we were separated, and I was trying to deal with this whole situation on my own. I was disappointing Edward, et cetera, et cetera. So I ended up going back to New York and meeting with Jetta, who was my one of my teachers, formative teachers. And she said to me, come and I'll take care of you. So we started to work privately with the yoga again. And I started to slowly get my body back into some kind of balance through doing the yogic practice with her. And then we started to do baby bar and baby class. So in a couple of months, I was able to get myself back into shape and audition again for Edward. And so he held my contract for a whole year, mm-hmm. and said, when you get yourself together, let me have a look at you again, and we'll try to start all over. And we did, and he took me back into the company. So I did go back. I started rehearsal period. I started all the Balanchine rep, Raimonda, and Who Cares, and I was learning everything that he wanted me to do in that season. And at the end of that rehearsal period, that like after a month, that was like 10 days before my debut with the company, I was in so much pain. It was so hard to keep up that rhythm after being off for a whole year and having had that injury, that I felt that I wasn't able to give 100% of what my ability was. And I didn't feel confident with the pain I was feeling that I'd be able to get through the whole year. So I went up and talked to Edward, and I said, look, this is what's happening. I don't think I could continue. And he goes, well, what do you want to do? And I said, I think I need to stop. I think I need to resign and just take a break from dancing, because I can't perform at the level I know I'm able to. And I can't be in this limbo of I can't put you through that, the company through that, and I can't put myself through that emotionally. So I took the decision to leave the dance world, to try to see if I could heal, to try to heal from the depression. I was in a
How old were you by then?
27.
Wow, that's really young.
Yeah, 27, 28. I was at the top peak of my career, boom, and that hit. So it was an identity crisis. And I remember meeting a friend of mine that worked for Miami City Ballet, brought me to this doctor who was a pioneer in holistic healing in Miami. And he was a chiropractor and an acupuncturist, but he was working with this methodology that was called network chiropractic.
Oh yeah, I know that. Yeah.
Sorry. And he started doing these type of treatments that works with the innate intelligence of the spine to unravel trauma. Mm-hmm. And I started doing that work with him. And that's where I really became connected with the holistic world and the holistic modality. And he was able to actually help me heal from not only the physical ailment, I'm sorry, but also in all the mental and emotional trauma I had gone through from childhood up until that point. Mm-hmm. He helped me to unravel and understand through physical experience, and release all those emotions and release wherever I was blocked or stuck. And I started to teach some of the yoga that I had learned with Jetta and Giulio. I started to work at his office, giving those kind of body work classes to his patients before they went into treatment, because he had said, as a dancer, you're so open and you're so flexible. It's easy for the energy, once it's stimulated, to move through because you're so open as a dancer. But some of the clients I have never moved their bodies in their whole life. And it's so hard for me to be able to move emotions and move mental energy that's stuck in them, because they don't even have a connection, an awareness with their bodies. Yeah. So would you be willing to work with them to help them have awareness? So I did that for a while. And then that year I got my certification as a personal trainer, and I was training people in a gym and doing all these things that were outside of the dance world, which were incredible experiences that helped me learn about people, all kinds of people. I mean, some people I saw, old people, I saw young people, I saw people that were studying to be doctors, I saw people that were training to be in Miss Florida beauty pageant. I remember helping a girl get into shape to be able to go into those competitions. So I started getting all of this life experience in that environment. But after a period of time, I started missing the dance world and missing being connected somehow to dance. And then there was a part of me that felt that I left too soon. So I started looking at, I enjoyed teaching and working with people. So I opened up the yellow pages and looked at what was available school-wise in Miami, ballet schools. And there wasn't very much. There was one school connected to college and a high school, New World School of the Arts. And then there were these very local schools, a few, 5 or 6. Miami City Ballet School wasn't there yet. So I I made a cover letter. I got 10 envelopes. I wrote to the 10 schools that existed. I told them who I was and that I'd be interested to teach. And one small school had called me and said, we need a teacher, can you come? And that was the beginning of my teaching career. After that, I got a call from New World School of the Arts to come and substitute teach. And at the college level and at the high school level, the students enjoyed the class so much that they went to the dean of the school and asked for me to be put on faculty. So he called me into the office, Danny Lewis, and he said, you know, I don't have a full-time position, but I have this teacher that's going on leave, and I have this teacher that's going to be away at this period of time. I could use you as a substitute teacher, a permanent substitute teacher. So they put me in the system, and I started doing that, and I ended up teaching more that year than the actual regular teachers. So that became a regular job. And then this other school called me that had more classes. And eventually, after a year of doing that, I got a call from Linda Villela, and she said, you know, I hear through the grapevine that you're teaching and that you're a good teacher, and I was wondering if you would be interested in teaching some classes. I can't even call it a school. I started 2 classes because there's nowhere really in Miami of any level of a school for my daughter. And I was wondering if you would come and teach my daughter's class. We have her class and we have a younger class. That's all we have right now. So it's not enough to offer you a job, but would you be able to come? You know, honestly, I didn't call you before because I knew that you were a little bit in a depression, but now it seems like you're in a good place. So I said, okay, Linda, I'll come. I felt obligated to go because of what had happened. And I taught class for Krista Villela, who was her daughter. And in that class was Craig Salstein and Patricia Delgado and a couple of other dancers that ended up actually making very nice careers for themselves. And at the end of the class, those kids also went to Linda and said, can't we have Nancy all the time? So Linda said to me, I don't have enough classes to offer you, but I could offer you to come 4 times out of the week because the kids really want you to come. And then I'll give a 5th time out of the week to another teacher. So I started doing that. And then she started asking me questions about students and levels. And if I wanted to make the school bigger, what would need to happen? And we started working together and building the school. And we ended up creating, by the time we left Lincoln Road and moved to the brand new building they built for Miami City Ballet, we ended up having 7 levels. We had 250 kids. We had about 6 teachers teaching in the move. Then once we got to the building, the school grew even more. And I ended up building that school together with Linda from that one class that started in that one little studio on the Pietanal Street in Miami. So, and I stayed and worked with them for 13 years. And I think those were some of the happiest years of my life, working with those students, building something from nothing, where I had a voice and I had a connection with those kids that was so beautiful and so fulfilling. I became kind of like a second mother to hundreds of kids. And then the company grew and they made like a studio company that I was in charge of. And I gained the experience over the years with the trajectory of the career through being in Europe, through having the foundation at Ballet Theatre, through getting the knowledge that I did in Chile and working in Chile with the ballets that I danced there. And then having the experience in the holistic world, and then having the experience working and mentoring students. and having like the apprentice program. I was staging Balanchine ballets every year, several, for them to perform, for them to do their final showing. And I work with the people from the Balanchine Trust used to come to approve the work that I did. So I was getting a lot of feedback from them also with the kind of ballet mastering work. All of those years of doing that gave me the experience that I needed to do the job that I'm doing now. It was kind of, I couldn't have planned to do what I did. I kind of just kept these situations kept finding me, and I kept making decisions to go in that way because it felt right and because it brought me fulfillment and happiness. So again, going back to that first lesson that I learned leaving ABT and going to Chile.
And following your heart.
And following my heart. So at 18 years later in Miami, after having this stability that I built for myself there, I did over the years get back in shape and went back to dancing. I did some guesting and I did some work with some contemporary choreographers. At one point, I felt strong enough and good enough to go back to a company. And my husband at the time had said to me, no, this time I'm not going to agree to do that with you. You know, we built a nice life for ourselves here in Miami. I don't want to take another chance and, you know, follow you again to pursue a dance career. So I had to make a choice between building my life with my husband or going back to the dance career. And I chose building the life. So at that point in time, I thought I would have children and I would have a family and I would continue teaching in the school because I was in a co-directing the school, and I was in a position that was very comfortable and I was very happy. I loved doing what I was doing. But then we had some problems and some conflict with my husband, and we ended up divorcing. And my mom had come from New York to live with us in Miami, and she was working at Miami City Ballet School, and she started getting sick. She started having trouble with her heart. So I went through the divorce and my mom getting sick at the same time. And I had made the decision to go back home near my brothers, near my family, so that I would get help with my mom. And I didn't want to be in Miami where I had not so good memories with my personal life and the husband situation. So we decided to go. I didn't have a job, but I thought, well, you know, at least I'll have a home, I'll be with my family, and then I'll figure it out. I'll figure out what I'll do. And I got a part-time position for 6 weeks teaching at the ABT summer intensive program. Because over the years, I kept sending students to ABT, and John Meehan had a relationship with me because I was sending my Miami students to him. And he kept saying, well, Nancy keeps giving me good students, so she must be a good teacher. So I went to New York and I taught a company class, and he had a look at me teaching, and he said, okay, would you want to come for the summer program? When I had contacted them to let them know I was moving back home. And mid-summer program, John came to me and said, would you like to take over my position as director of the summer intensive programs? And I was like, what do you mean? Why? Well, you're really good at what you do, and I'm taking the directorship in Hong Kong. So I was like, yeah, sure. I need a job. I'll try it. What do I need to do? And he explained that there were 6 programs throughout the United States. I'd have to travel to audition and recruit students, and then direct the program in New York. So there were 7 levels. I'd need to design the program and do a show at the end of the program for the parents and whatever. So I ended up taking that position and kind of ballet mastering for the studio company in the first year. Then Kevin called me to assist Twyla Tharp and Keith Roberts in some of the rep that they were teaching, because I was a Twyla dancer in the company when I was dancing for ABT. So they said, sure, if Nancy could come and help out. So I was doing the director of the summer program, some ballet mastering for the studio company, and assisting Twyla and Keith with some stuff in the main company. And at the end of that year, Kevin asked me to join his team as a ballet mistress in the main company.
So you're not called ballet mistress, you're called
yes, a director of repertoire. I keep using the old title. Yes, I'm a director of repertoire. The name was changed
I actually didn't know that name. I was like, what? I mean, I assumed it was ballet mistress.
Yes, they changed it last year. With all the social movement that was happening, they felt that it was a more appropriate name to give us. I guess the title of ballet master had a connotation that was not favorable for many people in the company, and so they took a decision to change the title. So, but it's that responsibility of training the dancers, working with the repertoire.
It's huge. I think it's one of the hardest jobs.
It is. It's a invisible job that's very, very important to sustain the company. And that's what I've been doing for the past 17 years. And in the midst of that, I got back on stage with Ballet Theatre when Gelsey did her version of Sleeping Beauty with ABT. She asked me to do the role of Carabosse. So that was my first time getting back on stage with the company since I had left. And then I've been doing character roles since. So I'm putting on a lot of hats. When Alexei Ratmansky came, he took me as his assistant. So I've been assisting him in all the work that he's done at Ballet Theatre for the past 12 years. And I've been his kind of ambassador to other companies to stage his work. So I've done a lot of work at San Francisco Ballet for him. I went to Paris Opera and did 7 sonatas, stage 7 sonatas for him, Washington Ballet, Het National. So I stage works. I take care of the repertoire. I train the dancers, teach company class, rehearse the classical rep also. They put me in different positions at different times. And I'm kind of mother to a lot of the dancers right now. So
that's wonderful. I mean, I'm overwhelmed because your story is fantastic, and it's got a lot. So it's a lot. It's beautiful. But I mean, I know we've passed the hour already, but I would like you to say a few words about your path in Ayurveda and why you chose this, because I think do you actually use it as well in your teaching? I mean, I would love to hear a little bit about that.
Yeah. So I have adjacent to this whole career morphing, I had a spiritual path develop in the year 2000. I went to India, and because of all of that background of learning yoga, I was kind of in search of experiencing firsthand in India a yoga teacher from the roots, from the motherland, and wanting to know more about the spirituality behind the practice, et cetera, et cetera. And I did a whole trip. We ended up in Varanasi. And in that whole trip, I didn't find what I was looking for. And the last day that I was in Varanasi, which is a very holy city where people feel that if they go there, even if they have a disease, they'll die and they'll go straight to nirvana and not have to come back in this incarnation. That's their belief. So on the Ganges River, I lit a candle and I said a prayer, you know, please guide me to a teacher who could help me to understand more about what I'm seeing, because in that holy city, the amount of faith and the amount of spirituality that was there was so magnetic and overwhelming to experience. I wanted to understand more. What is this that I'm witnessing? And when I got back to Miami, one of my best friends came to chat about the trip. You know, you went to India, what was it like, et cetera, et cetera. And I told her, and I said to her, you know, but I didn't find what I was really looking for, which was a teacher that could actually teach me something. And she goes, Nancy, I have a book for you. I want you to read it. And then if it resonates with you, let me know, and I'll bring you to the teacher that you're looking for. So she handed me an autobiography of a yogi. I read it in one weekend, and I said, okay, take me to this teacher. And she brought me to Paramahamsa Hariharananda, who is a realized master that came from the direct lineage that Yogananda, in fact, he was initiated, one of his initiations was by Yogananda. Mm-hmm. And there was an ashram in the south of Miami, in Homestead, where the farms are. And this realized master was there with all the monks, and all of them with the knowledge of this lineage. And so I went and I took initiation, and I started to learn the practice of Kriya Yoga meditation. And I trained and went for 3 years and studied with the monks there. And I'm still to this day following and studying with the monk that initiated Swami Vidyadeshananda. So I have a guru. And I have the very strong meditation practice that I do. And I learned about Ayurveda 20 years ago when I met my guru, and the effects that it can have on healing. So because of the whole trajectory of my life, I didn't start to study at that time, but my brother and my mom became extremely ill at the same time. My brother was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer in 2009. My mom was going through all of her illness of her heart at that same point in time. It was the same time that I moved back to New York. So I became caretaker for both my brother and my mom. And my brother, when he was diagnosed, came to me and said, you know, you're mixed up with all this holistic stuff. Can you find me a way to deal with my cancer that's not going to be just the chemotherapy? Because I know I'm going to die very quickly. He had only a 2-month prognosis. And so I started looking, and I found an integrative oncologist in New York that incorporated Ayurveda with oncology. Wow. And I brought my brother there, and what was a 2-month prognosis was prolonged for 7 years. And I saw what the Ayurvedic part of his treatment did for him. First of all, and the approach the doctor had, this oncologist also had a guru in south of India. When I walked into the office, I saw the picture of the guru, and I was like, okay, I was really guided here, not by a chance, but really guided here for my brother. And my whole brother's complete way of life was changed to a much healthier life. So he was able to go through the chemotherapy and not have side effects. People didn't know that he was sick until he got very, very ill at the last month of his life. So it gave him, and then it changed, going through that whole process with the approach the doctor had to the illness. Like he kept telling my brother, this is an opportunity for you to grow. This is an opportunity for you to heal many parts of your life. It's not necessarily a death sentence unless you take it from that point of view. You can do so many things to keep the healthy part of your body alive. And he did all the herbal protocol. He changed his diet. He changed his lifestyle. He started meditating. We would go and do like a singing bowl meditation together, and I would accompany my brother. So
and he was willing to also participate.
He was
right?
so open. He was so open to it. My brother was a musician. We lived together when I danced at Ballet Theatre. So we had a connection. And he also played for Giulio and Jetta's yoga classes. So there was a connection there already. And the journey my brother went through with his cancer was life transforming. And he literally changed who he was and how he approached life. And through going through the illness, he found an inner peace that I don't think he would have found if he didn't go through the illness, which is the same kind of happiness I found if I hadn't gone through my injury and the depressions and the whole journey I went through trying to heal everything that had happened to me up until that point. I felt like dance was the vehicle with which I was brought on or guided to have a healing journey and to grow spiritually. I wouldn't have gotten to where I'm at in my life if it hadn't been for everything I had gone through, negative and positive. So seeing that in my brother, and then after he passed, having another friend get diagnosed with cancer and trying to help her, but help her too late. It was too late for the holistic work to have effect. She was too far advanced in the disease. Made me understand that there is a path, this Ayurvedic path, which is the science of life, which is the ancient wisdom that was given to humanity to be able to prevent disease or bring balance back once disease or imbalance happens in a person.
Nurture
exactly
health,
nurture health or bring someone back to health. There's all this knowledge, Vedic knowledge, that goes hand in hand with the yoga I've been practicing they're sister sciences, hand in hand with the yoga I've been practicing my whole life. And part of the spiritual practice that I started 20 years ago with my teacher, with my guru, I have to find a way to know more about this. So I always used to give the excuse with my ABT schedule, it's not going to happen. I'm never going to be able to do it. I can't go to Dr. Lad, who's in New Mexico, to study. How am I going to do this? But I knew after my friend died, who was the friend that brought me to my guru.
So you went with Vasant Lad.
I've been studying with Vasant Lad, right? And I also have been studying at Kerala Ayurveda Institute here in the United States, which is based, the US base of that academy is in California. They had an online program set up. So I've been studying for the past, since 2018, through the online program. And for the past 3 years, I've been going. When Dr. Lad came to New York, I would go and do the seminars with him. And now he's giving also, with the Zoom and the pandemic, he's been giving courses throughout the whole past 2 years that I don't miss one of those courses because he's such a master at the science.
Books are beautiful.
Yeah. So I started studying. I decided to do the first year program, the wellness counselor program. And at the end of that, I was like, I can't stop here. So I went into the practitioner program. And at the end of the practitioner program, I felt like I just had enough knowledge, but enough to let me know that I know nothing and I have to keep studying. So they accepted me into the doctorate program, and I'm on the journey. So
that's wonderful. I mean, I would want to have you as my doctor for sure.
Oh gosh. Well, the beautiful thing is that I'm just this past year with the pandemic been able to, at first I kept it very private because I didn't think people in the dance world would understand my craziness. I have a guru, I have meditation, I'm learning Ayurveda. I thought they would think I'm cuckoo. But then something shifted, and I decided to let go of that fear in the pandemic and try to offer, at least in my little family of ABT, some of the knowledge that I learned. And I set up a 3-series workshop for anybody that was interested on the basics of Ayurveda, on self-care through Ayurveda, and then yoga and breathing, pranayama, meditation. I broke it down into 3 series. So about 45-50 members came to the workshop all 3 days during the pandemic. I did it online. And from that, I had my first volunteers to practice. We call them rogis. So in Ayurveda, the rogi is those who seek guidance from a vaidya, from a doctor, for self-care. Instead of calling them clients, it's in Sanskrit, it's so beautiful, rogi. The dancers became my first rogis. And now I'm going to be doing my doctorate dissertation on, I'm interested to find out what effect could 3 very well-known Ayurvedic medhya rasayanas, herbs for mind, how can they help pre-performance and performance anxiety in professional dancers? So my dissertation is going to be that. I'm going to look at the effects of Brahmi, ashwagandha, and a lipid-based shirabella thylam, which can be taken internally through nasya, through nasal administration, or by application on the fontanelle soles of it. So, and 35 of the 50 dancers that were in class that day that I presented my idea to, 35 agreed to participate. So I'm really excited about that.
Oh, I think that's fantastic. I mean, what a gift anyway, you give them anyway.
Yeah, so I'm hoping to have good results, and then I can extend that out. We'll see what happens. I leave it up to universe to decide what's supposed to happen from that. But that's what I'm doing right now.
Well, Nancy, I mean, thank you so much, because we've gone really much past the time that I asked you to dedicate to me. So I just would like you to say, if you have one advice to give to a young dancer that starts now, what would that be?
That would be, look for someone who you trust as a person that you can connect with to give you objective feedback. And if you have doubts, if you have problems, if you have questions, go to that person and communicate. Find someone that you can communicate with. Don't hold in everything that you're having trouble with. And the other would be, follow your heart and dance because you love to dance. Don't dance because you're looking for external approval or external reward. Do it because you love it. It's a short career, and it's a career that is magnificent. It can give you so much. It can help you to learn so much about yourself and life if you allow it to. If you don't let these other areas that can block your growth affect you, right? So do it because you love it, and take care of your mind and body, the both together.
dance to express, not to impress.
Absolutely. Totally.
Okay, Nancy, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
It was so interesting for me to listen to you, so I'm sure everybody else will get a lot out of this. Thank you so much.
Do you still need me to send you, you had asked for some photos and a bio. Do you need that?
I just want to finish this.
Okay.
Thank you so much.